Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about True Detective Night Country episode 3. It is called part 3. Full spoilers from the start of this review, and this is a really strong episode. This gets things back on track. As you may remember, last week I wasn't so keen on episode 2. So I'm glad that this seems to have got things back on track once again. And yeah, really strong. I think this is the best of the 3 episodes so far because we get some pretty meaty developments in the case. And that stuff has a nice little pace to it where you see the 2 different investigators working well together. And you just get a sense of a relationship between them and some of the tension which exists, but also the way they can kind of stem that with some like well-timed banter or just one or two things which they have a bond over as well. So without thinking everything's hunky-dory, you can certainly see a sense of a little bit more of a camaraderie and let's get on for the sake of the case type thing, and some fun moments. Like you definitely get more into some of the characters in this, including like Pete as well. Some of his stuff and his scenes with Navajo and Liz I think are good. And this episode also I think does a good job of once again getting into some of the Native American heritage and also some of the reasons why there's a lot of tension between the locals, the Native Americans, and the police, and we definitely get more of that stuff. At one point, there's a protest over a mine, and you get a whole group of Native American characters who feel like this new mine is infringing on their land, and it feels like they're being kicked off their land basically as a result. So they're there at a protest, and the adopted daughter of Liz, Lyra, she's also there, which pisses Liz off later on because of course it does. But Lyra is very passionate about standing up for the cause, and once again it's getting her closer to her roots, which Liz doesn't seem to be in favour of. So there's a lot of good things in this episode. We actually open with a flashback which jumps back 7 years, and that shows some important stuff as well, background stuff, because we have Navajo showing up at this house and she's there to arrest a woman. But it turns out this is like a clinic for people who need medical help or they need to give birth, and it's almost this feels like it could be like an off the books type place to help out women who don't have a lot of money. And I'm guessing for the locals, particularly like local Native American community. So she arrives, and it's a little bit of a comedic moment because she arrives and says, I've got to take you into custody. And then there's a woman giving birth and she's getting to the crucial stage, and the other woman puts it to Navarro, you can take me in or you can help me give birth to this woman. And Navarro actually helps out in the birth, but there's tension there because the woman who's giving birth sees that Navarro's there and doesn't really want her help. So there's tension there, and that woman comes back into it in the present stuff later on. But it's just implied that I think there's a lot of heat on Navajo for becoming a detective, becoming a cop locally, because the locals don't trust the police in Alaska and they feel betrayed, and that there's a racist element towards them from the police. So Navajo being from the background and then joining the police, yeah, that hasn't gone down too well. So it's showing some of that. So I think that's some important background, and we get into the current meat of the plot. As I said, there's some pretty fun banter between Liz and Navajo, because at one point they're sort of teasing each other about their two like affairs that they've got going on. As I said, the Christopher Eccleston character, Liz has an on-off thing with, I think his name's Ted, and the character we've seen Navajo with at various points. Because there's quite a good scene with her and that character in this episode where she wants him to help her with information on a particular guy that she's trying to track down. Thinks he might be able to help. And once again, there's the sense that maybe Navajo only goes to this guy either for sex or probably for a bit of information if she feels he can help her out. So there's a sense that he feels like used, and that then maybe there's not that much sense of a relationship with the two of them. So he sort of forces her hands in the scene, because he says, sure, I'll give you information, but you have to tell me something about yourself. You have to tell me something personal. And it's this way of getting a bit more information on her. It's actually quite a clever plot thing. But the scene then turns really dark, because Navajo reveals that she comes from an abusive past. Her father was abusive towards the mother and towards the kids as an extension, and that they got out of there. They escaped from the father, but the mother ultimately couldn't handle it, and she ended up killing herself. And so it suddenly turns really dark, and the guy is taken aback. But it's a good scene because it's well handled, and it's a good way for us to get to know a little bit about Navajo's backstory, but in a very organic way, and it feels like an important part of what's being set up, and also it makes sense considering how much trauma Navajo, and particularly her sister, is. We see another scene with the sister here where she's out on the ice and she's kind of had another breakdown, and Navajo has to try and talk her around. But when it comes to the case this week, the big thing is then they start waving through the two various case files from the different case, and then they compare and contrast, and they find out then there's some good little bits of detective work in this, and I think it goes to what a good detective is. A good detective, I think, has good instincts and also is very good at just thinking logically when it comes to like even the smallest bit of evidence, and just getting to the nub of what exactly that could mean. And Liz is very smart in that sense, because when she sees like a photograph and it's a certain t-shirt which Annie, the girl, is wearing, and she like puts a time frame on it based on, I forget what it is, but it's whatever was on the t-shirt, and it's to do with either like a band or just something like that, and she put it a certain time frame because I think it's got the date of the tour or something. So that narrows things down, and they also see the nanny's she's got like the green hair, I think, like the dyed hair, and it's linked to this certain salon. And they find out then Clark had been seeing Annie, and there's this link to this salon where they go and see this woman, and it turned out she had lied, like she didn't mention this link because she apparently had a thing with Clark as well, or then he used to come into the salon anyway, and Clark's the one who's gone missing from the bodies, like he's disappeared from the scientist, so it seems like he's either still alive or there's some supernatural shenanigans going on, and it's starting to look more and more like he could have been involved in Annie's death somehow. But they asked this woman, because she says, yeah, there was a relationship between the two of them, but things didn't go very well. And they ask her, why didn't you tell us before? And she said she did. She contacted the police about it. And there's a nice little cut in this where she's about to say, because they asked her, who did you talk to? And it cuts away before before she says, and then it's the next scene when they're in the car, and Navajo is fuming, but it's then and it's revealed, then it's Hank, the John Hawkes character, and that's a really smart, nice reveal, and definitely considering how sinister he suddenly appears from the last episode. And don't forget, he's been abusive towards his own son, so there's been more than one examples of abuse, but the abuse which Navajo suffered as a kid, there's a connection there. I'm not really saying there's going to be any big reveal and any links to John Hawkes' character, but just then thematically there's sort of a link there anyway. So Navajo comes in all gun blazed. She is just pissed with John Hawkes' character, comes storming in and really threatening, and he just makes a really jerky response, because it's like, basically he buried evidence, which is what they're saying, and it's definitely true. And why did you dismiss it? Why did you bury it? And he makes this crude comment about how Annie was like putting it about, basically sleeping with so many different men, and he makes a crack about Mrs. Robinson, which, well, I think that's to do with Liz and her thing with, or it might have been the Annie, but that leads to Pete when Hank storms off saying, who's Mrs. Robinson, which is really funny. But there's some clever bits of humour which are weaved in like that. But yeah, Hanks just dismisses it, says, no, I can't make a big deal out of every man she sleeps with and thinking it's that important. And he's just being very crude and submissive. And obviously, with the girl now dead, it's really in poor taste. But this gets Navajo fired up even more, and Liz steps in the middle of them, and she stands up to Hawks, kind of questioning this, but she arguably lets him off quite lightly, especially in Navajo's eyes, because she just says, why don't you do your fucking job, basically. And there's a bit where he gets back in her face and she just spits I think it's some water or some milk or something back in his face, just spits in his face anyway. And it's a tense scene, but Navajo's mad as well, because like, is that all? Is that like, just do your fucking job? Is that all he's gonna get? And Liz has to try and calm things down, calm the tensions down, and get Navajo focused back on the case. But that's when Navajo storms off and she goes to her on-off boyfriend to try and get information, because they also heard about this guy Oliver, who had some link to this and who Annie knew as well, and they both sort of knew. So you get this slow burn thing where they're both trying to find out where Oliver's whereabouts may have been. And you get this thing, I think it sort of shows at different times how sometimes these main characters are going to have to go outside of the system to get information and work off the books at times. And we see how maybe Navajo is a bit more willing to do that, because that's what she does. She gets this Oliver's location, and because she finds out he's on one of these no man land camps, and she comes to Liz later and says, yeah, I found out where he is. He's in this place. Let's go. And they go over, and this is another quite tense scene and another example of just getting into some of the laws of this land, because the way this Oliver is quite hostile towards them before he even knows what they want, because they come in and he's in a trailer and he's bringing up all this to do with you're trespassing on my land, it's private property, you've got no jurisdiction. And he's saying you need like a search warrant or an arrest warrant, and they're threatening back, saying, well, do you want us to go and get it? And he's just being very hostile and not very, not very positive. Like, because they're saying, you're not under suspicion, you're not under arrest, we just want information about Annie and what happened. And they don't really get anything. Like, the scene doesn't really lead anywhere, like, which isn't a complaint. It's a well done scene, and yeah, I mean, in a way, although they didn't get any information, I still quite like the scene. And the big thing at the end of the episode, like the big hook, is that Pete has been trying to get his phone, like as in Clark's phone, get into it all episode. And once again, it goes back a little bit to Pete being the younger one, the more tech savvy, and it's a good way to get him involved a bit more, because obviously they've been doing a lot of the hands-on detective style work. And finally, at the end of the episode, he gets into it, and yeah, you get quite an eerie end to the episode, because there's video footage of Annie, and she appears to be under the ice, and she's warning, she says something like, if he finds me, I'm dead, or something like that. And I think she might mention Clark or something, but certainly says, if he finds me, I'm dead. And then there's some sort of rustling behind her, and she kind of screams and, like falls away or something like that. But she seems to be under the ice, something like that anyway. And it could be, with the way this has gone, could be something supernatural going on in that scene, or maybe someone like Clark was there and found her. But it's well done. It's a well done ending and sets things up well again. So yeah, I'm mostly positive on this one. Maybe one or two weaker moments, and I think you had one or two clunky music moments. Maybe that's the main complaints, but most of the stuff going on with the plot I was really engaged with. There were a couple of nice choices in the direction and a couple of nice reveals, and just the way it was handled, like, I did enjoy that cutaway, and then it was revealed when Navarro and Liz in the car were talking. So I gotta say I enjoyed this episode quite a lot, and I would say it's the best episode of the three so far. So we seem to be getting into our groove now with this series of True Detective. So good stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Let me know if you have any theories about the direction it could be going in. And you can support me for just $1 a month to help things keep coming on patreon.com/borednow. But I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.